Imagine that you end up being betrayed by your wife, and this even makes you self-destruct. However, you go back to 10 years in the past, and in this way you will remake all your choices. In the fall of 2017, in a well-lit room, a man named Yan stood in front of a woman sitting in an armchair. The woman, actively gesticulating, told him to withdraw 100,000 because his brother wants to buy a new car. Mu twisted his face in frustration. Gritting his teeth, in his hand he held a sheet on which something was written. The man opened his eyes and looked down. He said he had no money. The woman immediately lost all composure, jumped out of her seat and started asking how it happened, why he had no money and where his salary was for this month. Unceremoniously, she began to put her hands in the man's pockets, reminding him that she had told him to go to some elderly people and ask for money. Yan Mu only knew how to stay still, allowing her to do as she pleased. As soon as the pockets were turned inside out, they were empty. The woman, without thinking twice, slapped the man in the face. She started scolding him again, calling him trash and asking where the money was, where he hid it, and asked him to show it to her immediately. Yam only knew how to laugh, saying it was only about money. A glass of water that was on the table, and she threw it. The man was apparently stunned by it jumping out of his head. The glass fell to the ground and broke. The remains were scattered in different directions. The woman continued to show her dissatisfaction with the fact that Yam, who in her opinion was a loser, could also smile in such a situation. He kept his head down, and with a mark from a recent blow was visible on his cheek. He laughed and said he was a loser who had no money. It seems that after everything that happened, his patience came to an end. Now he started screaming. He paid for everything, starting with this woman's car, ending with his brother's wedding. He said that even if he earned 100 million a month, it still wouldn't be enough for his family. The woman asked Mu the amount he had mentioned with displeasure, and then asked if he considered his family to be his family as well. He started laughing again, closing his eyes. The red liquid ran from his head down his face because the glass had already flown into him. He was amused by this woman's words about family. He shouted that he had had enough of such relatives, so she should go to hell with them. The woman replied that if Yam was fed up with all this, then he could just take his life, ending it all. Yam explained that it was a great idea and asked if she really thought he couldn't actually do it. In fact, the woman asked him if he really wanted to go base and said it was a good idea, but he should wait until she bought accident insurance and then his departure would pay for itself. Smiling, Yam looked at Fang Yuxue, saying that everything was fine, and also noting how cruel she was. The man ran away and over the woman's loud scream, ran to the window. He flew past her, falling. At this moment, Yam was thinking that the end of his life had come. On the piece of paper he had been holding in his hand all this time was written, "At the conclusion of the hospital's stomach cancer last stage, early July 2009, 5 people were in the room. 4 of them were comfortably seated on the couch, and 1 was kneeling in front of the couch. A woman with a short haircut asked why he suddenly knelt down. The blonde man sitting in the corner of the couch laughed and commented that it was probably a tradition for this person's family to kneel after entering the room. Yam was on his knees and wanted to say something, but suddenly the realization came to him. He found out what position he was in. He's on his knees in front of these people, but most importantly, he is still alive. The woman crossed her arms over her chest, commenting on Yam's words and also asking him not to make a fool of himself. Mu raised his head and addressed this woman, calling her mother. She just asked in response who he called mommy here. He has to add 400,000 to the bride's price, and only after that will he have the right to call her that. Yam was taken by surprise. She said of the rescue. Now he realized he had gone back 8 years. It was then 8 years ago that he proposed to Yatsu. The woman continued to insist that Yan will add 400,000 to the ransom, and there is nothing to think about getting up from her knees. Yam could resolutely say that she had already thought of everything. Now, all his thoughts were about the fact that in his previous life he had fallen into the sucking fan's family. The smiling guy agreed, very happy with the news. His face immediately began to look kinder. She asked if he agreed with her condition. However, Mu shouted that he didn't agree. He was thinking that now he could start all over again. So this time he would never make the same mistake he had made earlier. The woman jumped out of her seat and asked him what he had just said. Did he really think that his daughter was not worth $1 million? He asked the woman if she had any hearing or head problems, and then explained he wouldn't pay a dime for the bride. Now the bride herself intervened. She also got up from her seat and started asking how Mu could do this to her. Yuxue looked upset and confused. She said it wasn't easy for her parents to raise her, so it's worth paying them a bride price. He asked what Yuxue would give him. In this case, a losing brother who just needs money. The brother was not at all pleased with these words addressed to him. Now he jumped out of his seat in a rage, asking who Mu had just dared to call a loser. Yam was still calm. He indifferently told the guy that he was a complete one who couldn't do anything. The losing brother of the bride punched the one who just insulted him. But Mu was no longer going to hit back and swear in the same way as before. He deftly dodged the impending blow, grabbed the guy by the head, leaning him to the ground with him. The mother of the family screamed and told him to immediately let him out because he is his brother, a member of the family. Mu asked again. A family member has not yet had a marriage, which means that left is not your brother and is not a member of your family. The guy stood up and firmly stated that from now on he didn't want to have anything to do with the Fan family. Yuxue turned to Yam asking him if their relationship was worth the money. The boy asked her if she had ever thought about how hard her parents had to work to win 500,000 in her previous life. In the name of the ransom money, her father despaired and bought a lottery ticket and unexpectedly won 500,000 and then had a nervous breakdown because of that money. The last thing he said when he left this family was that they needed the money cow, not him. Already on the street, he approached the building where there was a signed Social Security lottery. The ad text he was reading said that the lottery's first prize totals 100 million. He thought it was a very good start to the lottery. He also thought that at that time the first prize in his father's number was 100 million. For various reasons, this series of numbers was etched in his memory. He knew he went in to buy a lottery ticket. The man at the cashier who handed the ticket to the boy said that the lottery draw would be held tonight at 9:50. On the street, we suddenly saw his father walking nearby. His father, rubbing his eyes, asked himself if he saw Mu now. He didn't go to the family today. Maybe it looked like Mu was watching his father. It was lunchtime. Now the boy assumed that his father had had a bad lunch. Once again, he watched the old man sadly on the other side of the corner. The father passing by said that if he won, he wouldn't have to worry about the bride price for his son. He hoped for God's help, and I believe that this time he must be lucky. Mu decided that from that day on he would no longer let his father and mother suffer. Suddenly, Yam received some kind of congratulatory notification. He was congratulated on the successful binding of the Moon's Eye God system. The task of the beginner is to get 100 million assets and own his own company. The task completion time is limited to 24 hours. There are 21 hours left until the end of the task. The system asked to take this task seriously. Otherwise, Yan, whose life would be lost in total, he had a life point. Confused and who didn't understand what was happening, this system said that he had only 21 hours to live. This is real, he has just been reborn. On the arm now was the same mark, the Eye of the Moon. Suddenly Mu heard someone's voice. His owner would ask what was going on and demand that someone take his hands off. Mu knew. He recognized the person to whom this voice belonged and was surprised, because it really is a man. He ran to help, screaming and asking what happened. The memories flooded again. A boy and a girl were playing together. A boy was swinging a swing on which he had a girl. Whoever was sitting, he and Ming have now been friends since childhood. She was always like a younger sister to him in a previous life. Ming's mother lost 500,000. Ming Yao temporarily lived in her family. Then he was at the Fan's house and did not answer Ming Yao's call. Later, he discovered that they were unable to pay the debt and were based on creditors. He even went to their tune. However, in this life, he only has to protect her. At this moment, two guys were harassing the girl. One of them pressed her against the wall, blocking his hands above her head with one hand and touching her body under her t-shirt with the other, and told her to keep screaming because he didn't care. No one would come to save her. The second bandit, who had the girl's cell phone in his hands, asked who she wanted to call, but she had already run outside. Now he fought with the guys who were molesting. He hit one of them. He flew straight to his partner, who even dropped her cell phone. Ming, now with tears in his eyes, rushed into the arms of his savior, who excitedly asked if he was okay. The guy who was slapped in the face was holding his nose and looked furious. He was unhappy that they dared to hit him. The second guy came from behind, believing that Yan was completely tired of living and intending to beat him. Ming looked at the bandit and warned Yan Mu about the danger, asking him to be careful. And Mu reacted quickly. He turned around, grabbing and twisting the arm of the attacker, who screamed in pain and begged to be released. According to him, these guys are just kung fu amateurs. How dare they? The guy who had been slapped in the face earlier stood there and got mad because Mu dared to hit his brother. Now he intended to eliminate him by a knife blade shining in his hand. Mu kept blocking the girl and then clarified the intentions of these bandits, asking if they had come for money. If that's the case, according to him, they will never get anything if they take even one step towards Mu and Ming Yao. One of the guys immediately asked if Yan Mu had any money. Another turns to his brother, saying that the guy in front of them is a poor man, but his boss is still desperately in need of money. With a knife, the blonde asked if Yan, who knew how much money they owed. After that, he immediately named that amount 500,000. Does Yan Mu have that kind of money? Yan Hu raised his hand, showing 3 fingers. He said he only needed 3 days and guaranteed them 500,000. The blonde said everything was fine, but ordered his brother's medical bills to be included in this amount. There are more than 100,000 from his brother. Standing behind him at the moment, holding his injured hand during the fight, the blonde continued talking. His face darkened. He warned that if there was no money within the agreed period, he would force this girl to pay her debt. Mu with his hand on the girl's shoulder. He said that in 3 days he would bring money, but the guys would have to beg forgiveness on his knees in front of her. Leaving, the guy shouted that their boss is the director of the real estate agency, and if he doesn't bring money, the boss will personally rip off his legs. The system notification came again. In this task, the key phrase is real estate. There are 20 hours left until the end of the mission because the system has asked you to complete the mission as soon as possible. It has also been said that the user's life is associated with survival points. If the current value of survival points is extremely small, the user's body will randomly experience adverse symptoms, and who has only had 1 life point and moves. Thoughts began to be occupied by food properties. Company, if you were not mistaken. This is the real estate company that went bankrupt. He was also concerned that his life was now determined by hit points. It wasn't very clear why they are just virtual glasses. Ming, who was next to him, turned to the guy, saying that it was all her fault. These bandits could find her everywhere she went, and now she dragged him inside too. Mu gently. He caresses the girl, trying to calm her down. He told her not to worry because money is not an issue. In 3 days, he will make a point of apologizing to her. Notice that she was very excited now, so she should go home. Suddenly, the guy's condition worsened. He realized something was wrong, but he didn't understand why. He felt dizzy abruptly. He touched her with one hand, closing his eyes and trying to recover. Worried, Ming asked Mu about her well-being. Well, she was surprised when the guy landed right on top of her. Mu was confused and mentally cursed because of what had happened, because now Ming Yao was lying on the floor and he himself, resting his hands on the floor sideways, was hanging over her. Stuttering, Ming now turned to the guy, asking if he was sick. After that, Mu began to explain that he didn't do it on purpose. He assumed he was a little weak, because he hadn't eaten during the day. The girl, turning her head to the side, convinced the boy that everything was fine, and I was going to bring him something to eat. And he realized that these were the random symptoms mentioned in the notification. He looked at the hand with the mark, and thought that it seems that this system completely controls his life. The image is transferred to the Yaxu's house. The whole family was there. They were sitting on the couch discussing something. The mother asked Fan how things were going, and if Mu answered her call. The girl shook her head, saying that he still hadn't answered. The father of the family jumped off the couch, running his hand over his daughter. He scolded her, calling her a useless creature who can't even control a man. What was the use of raising her? The mother barely held her daughter by the shoulders, as if protecting her from an angry hangry. She asked where he was in such a hurry. In her opinion, Yan wasn't himself today. It's so strange because Yan, who usually obeyed Yaxu, which could change suddenly. Suddenly, both parents asked if it could be that Yan got rich. The man took his daughter by the hand and said that she should keep Yan Mu for the sake of her own happiness. Since another girl could take him away at any moment, the man himself was now thinking only that if he and she really did get rich, then they would raise the bride's price and all his money would belong to them. The mother supported the father by advising the daughter. The daughter agreed, saying that in that case she needed to go. When she left, the girl sadly thought that Mu was probably hiding something from her, since he would never have done that to her before. The man was sitting at a table with plates of food, and he held out another plate, offering the girl to eat more fruit. Suddenly, someone rang the doorbell. The girl got up from the table, intending to open the door for the guest. Yaxu, she entered and began to talk to Mu, demanding that he explain himself by everything. He turned in the direction of the girl and, indifferent, asked what she was doing here. He explained that they had nothing else in common. He had not made this clear. He asked if the sick mother had not yet given up. These words drove the girl crazy. She started to say that it was all wrong and pointed at Mu with her finger. Asked if he was dating someone else. He changed his mind when his parents raised the price of the bride, turning a blind eye. He replied that it wasn't like that. But there was nothing left between them, considering that they had been dating for so long. Mu decided to give the girl some advice. She should leave the house as soon as possible. Perhaps then she would still be able to live freely. She left the house cursed and saying that she would make him repent. What had happened, Ming looked at with concern. She wanted to ask him about what happened between him and Fan. She thought they loved each other, so she didn't understand why it suddenly happened. Mu did not comment on the situation that just happened here. He was about to leave, saying he might not be back today. He allowed the girl to stay here overnight. The boy himself was now thinking that he could not tell her that the relationship that had lasted so many years had been forgotten. He was going to go out and see what business opportunities there were, and who was going outdoors. Now he stood on the street of Chenqing City and looked at the crowd gathered in one place from the people's conversations. It was clear that someone there was the owner of the third prize of this stage of the Shaanxi Jew. It turned out that there was only a single-digit difference between the third and first prize. That person must be sorry. That he was thinking that his father might have come to withdraw his prize too. The gray-haired man, who was Mu's father, stammered that he just wanted his son to buy a house and get married, then hide behind the newspaper. He thought that luckily he stayed in the lottery building and finished withdrawing the prize much earlier, and would have fewer problems with this group of reporters. Mu was standing under a street lamp. leaning against a pole and reading his newspaper. The system should allow him to buy a food real estate company. The headline of the newspaper he was reading said that the food real estate company is on the verge of bankruptcy. What is the future of the real estate market, however? Yan decided that the food real estate company was actually the most convenient company to invest in. Now, no one is optimistic about food, and who would have thought that the biggest business would be here in the future? If Yan, who buys the food company, becomes the richest man in a few years, he decided that it was based on this that he would start his business. Here was his chance to make a lot of money at 9:20. Mu was standing in front of the food real estate task and wondered why there are still so many people here. If the food company went bankrupt, the system notification came again. There's only 1 hour left to complete the task, because it had to be completed as soon as possible, otherwise Yan would lose his life. The system also alerted, as before, that there were invariably few hit points because the host's body would have random adverse symptoms and felt pain and squeezed the site where it was hurting with his hand. It was a heart. If he didn't have to go to the bank to withdraw his winnings, he wouldn't have spent an hour. Thus, the workers who passed by the site shouted, asking to make room for them while carrying a banner. Yan asked the men what it was. The man in the helmet explained that the workers were on strike because their wages had been overdue for almost 6 months, and we thought that this was a common situation when the builders' wages were overdue, and that's why there was so much confusion. The second man said he learned that the director had run away with all the money, and the second director was in debt. As yet, there is no money to pay salaries, so now everyone is demanding explanations and at least some money. Yan was amazed by what he heard. He asked if the director had escaped for good. The worker replied that this information came directly from the company. According to him, it should arrive today, which is why the workers are blocking it. Everything here, Mu thanked the men who were heading to where there were even more people. It was less than an hour away, but he still had a chance. After being reborn, he desperately wanted to live. A car stopped. People shouted from the crowd, turned to Kunrui and demanded the return of the money. The banner had the same requirement. The boss was forced to return the money earned with sweat. People didn't want it, let him leave. Until he returned the money, he had to pay salaries and migrant workers. The man, who was sitting in the car, was only annoyed by people who called them stinky peasants and a pack of rabid dogs. In his opinion, they are probably completely tired. Leaving that man cursing was a lie. Kunru's bodyguard was 35 years old. The director of the food company himself, who was 40 years old, sat in Libyan silence. He turned to the director, asking why not contact some people. These hillbillies gathered near the company are just a colossus, feet of clay. They will lose their strength if they are taught a good lesson. Kunrui asked what it was. The use of it, there are hundreds of people outside. He will hire hundreds of people who will be ready to fight them. Suddenly, someone knocked on the window. It was Yan Mu. Even Li Bio was scared and cursed when he saw the face of the guy who was looking at them through that glass, and who got the weather alert again. There were only 25 minutes left. By the end of the task in moments, Yan Mu was already inside the car. The bodyguard tried to move away from him, asking who took him here and told him to get out of here. The young man did not answer the bodyguard, but immediately arrived at the point. Turning to the director and saying that he had business with him, a lie, Libio was completely furious because the boy seemed not to have heard that. They told him to leave now. He repeated these words again and threatened, grabbing them by the clothes to have any success, and knew he was not afraid at all. He just kept bending his line. He said what he says now will affect whether Mu spends the rest of his life in prison or not. After these words, he asked again if they were sure they wanted Yan Mu to leave. The guy says that Yan Mu is the same as those people on the street who ask for money. Then the little guy suddenly spoke. He said he also didn't like the fact that salaries were late, so he had already figured out how to pay everything. He warned that if Yanu demanded something now, it wouldn't work. Mu hurried to tell the real reason for his appearance, because he is not here to ask for money. On the contrary, he is here to give money. Conroy was stunned. He immediately took off his sunglasses. His eyes were full of misunderstandings. He asked what that meant, and Mu explained that it means that he will help the director recover all his financial losses, including back wages, and that he will buy the food company, real estate, and become its director. Conroy asked the young man if he knew how much the economic loss was in this project, not to mention the acquisition, the payment of salaries only to workers. Mu closed his eyes in displeasure, saying that he could not spend so much time with them, then suggested that the director simply appoint him. The notification came from the system. Again, there were only 10 minutes left before the end of the task. Adjusting his glasses, Kunri said that if a guy doesn't have 50 million, then he shouldn't even think about buying the food company. Mu repeated the amount, which seemed very small to him. Enraged, Conroy saw this as a provocation and angry, shouted who was teasing him, the bald man telling him to throw the boy out of the car. Libio grabbed his clothes. Mu, with renewed vigor, did not tolerate it, and quickly calmed down. He secures the bodyguard to the seat. The man's face twisted, and he cursed again. Kunri looked at how that boy was dressed. He couldn't even think that he was rich and possessed martial arts, but he was able to defeat Libya. It was surprising that Director Kun put his hand on the shoulder of the bodyguard, who was trying to fight the guy, and asked him to wait. Conroy told the guy that right now he doesn't have the money to give wages to the workers and doesn't have time to mess with it for long. He asked not to blame him for not being polite, since Mu wants to buy his company. Yam asked the man not to worry because he will take this piece of land even if it costs 50 million. He's even willing to pay for it now, and I was thinking that the news had already said that there were several plots of land in the area. If he got his hands on everything now, it would be fashionable to double profits in the future. Mu said he is also willing to buy all the land that belongs to Director Kun now. Kun was completely stunned. He asked if the guy was joking, talking about it, and he thought that if he succumbed to the excitement, he might lose all the ground. But if this guy could really buy everyone, so it would be a great relief. They looked at the caller with a serious look, asking if he looked like someone who was joking in this situation. He asked me to set a price. Without further ado, there are only 5 minutes left until the end of the task. Kun actually asked again if the man's intentions and words were serious. He thought this guy didn't know that the price of land in this area was too high, but he was still willing to buy it at a high price. It looked absolutely crazy. The message from the system came again, informing that there were only 3 minutes left before the end of the task. The carrier's 5 senses would disappear due to the fine imposed if the task was not completed. In his head, Yan asked what decision Director Kun had made. It was obvious that the guy was in bad condition and that he didn't care about the match anymore. Kun has huge debts and can't wait to get to the end. Outside of them, Mu felt he simply had to buy Fuda's real estate company, showing 2 fingers. Conroy said about 20 million. If so, Yan, you can find 20 million. Conroy will immediately surrender this land to him. Yan Mu held his head. He didn't listen to what Conroy said anymore. He was scared because his hearing was fading. Mu, who tried to hold on with all his might. He agreed to the condition and asked to proceed with the registration, explaining that he was in a hurry. Judging by the lips and gestures of Director Khan, and who was already concluded that he said about 20 million, Conroy told his bodyguard to settle all the formalities with the Mu. There are 10 seconds left. Until the end of the task, the host's life force was slowly depleted. His sight as well as his hearing was fading. He was thinking that there was little time left, so he had to have time to sign this contract. The countdown was already underway. Yan could barely see anything after that. A credit card appeared in his hand with which he had to pay for the purchase. Conroy looked on with a sinking heart. At that moment in everything that was happening, 5 seconds, 4 seconds, successfully paid, 3 seconds, the countdown stopped when it ran out. We sat down and thought that the system did not say that the time had expired, which meant that it had succeeded. Kunri sat up smiling and satisfied. He looked at Mu he had just bought. For some reason, Mu still felt that his strength was leaving him. His life has just begun. As he can depart again, a message came from the system. It was a congratulations from the carrier for the successful completion of the task. Initial and prizes were also received for passing, including 10 life points, 3 additional bonus survival points, and the first level of trading. It was unlocked and Lua now had 13 hit points. The guy breathed a sigh of relief, got excited about the system's message. Yan learned that life points are awarded depending on the operator's income, investments, and rewards for completing the system's tasks. Depending on the current state of the wielder's survival costs, 1 hit point per day. The more hit points, the better the wielder's. Health and health points can also be used to purchase items from the system store. Someone was screaming outside. The man said that if they didn't get paid today, no one would go anywhere. A brick of a disgruntled man flew straight into the car window, which horrified Kun. They wouldn't let him go. The driver found him worried. He turned to the chief and asked if he was okay. He asked what he should do next and again offered to contact people who might come and get rid of people who feel uncomfortable. Conroy turned to Mu, asking if he could see what was going on. Andrew said that since the money had already arrived, Kunri could just send the workers pages directly. He was adjusting his timing, thinking about how slowly his body was recovering. Now he only has 13 hit points, which means he has 13 days left, and he didn't know when the system's next task would be. So he deemed it necessary to find a way to get hit points on his own. Kun told Li Bio to do like Yan, to tell people that the money would be transferred to them tonight. Bio, after listening, made it clear that everything was very clear to him. After the instructions, he opened the roof of the car and leaned out of it with a speaker in his hand. He called everyone's attention and advised them to go home, passing on the words of the boss that everyone would be transferred their salaries at night. The workers began to whisper among themselves. It is true that tonight they will pay all the unpaid money, the payment of which has been delayed for 6 months. Someone decided that it was worth giving the management one last chance. Since he will not be able to avoid it yet, it was decided to disperse and return at night in case of fraud. Bio told the boss that everyone had left and now he was waiting for him to take other action. What will they do now? Kun said they need to first go back to the office and invite Mu to see the factory. As soon as they arrived at the food real estate building. Once inside, Mu stands next to a huge map of the city of Chongqing that hangs on the wall. Kunri approached him, holding his planning book. Mu said he didn't need this planning book. He circled some territories on the map with a marker pointed to one, saying that it shouldn't be empty because there's no need to construct buildings and move something. He also indicated the land that needs to be purchased. After that, he circulated through another territory. This caused a strange reaction from Mu, who said that this piece of land in the east of the city is very remote. Moreover, it is in desolation, although it is cheap. According to Kun, it has no practical value. No one needs this piece of land for free. And whoever said that it should not worry man, he should listen to what he does. We were told and knew that there would be several new schools near this land in the east, and that it would be great to build a commercial zone there. And who said that when they buy this land, it is necessary to build a large shopping mall, specialized restaurants, a snack bar, a bookstore, and build a hotel there as soon as possible, finishing, according to him, it must be a new model so that the buildings are stylish. Kun was given the task of finding a construction crew. While he was supposed to focus on reliability and quality, the man replied that Mu could rest easy because he would take care of it. Stroking the man on his shoulder, the new boss told him to do as he told him, and then he wouldn't treat him badly. Conroy just has to trust his decisions, informed Mu that a meeting on investment issues will be held at the hotel tonight, where, according to rumors, there will be many interesting projects. He said he could escort and move there if he was interested. And he asked again about the investment. When meeting, he thought about the fact that life points are awarded from his income and investments. If you manage to invest, you will get a lot of life points, so in the evening you arrived at the hotel at the reception you were interested in, which for the investment meeting was taking place today. The girl was not far behind him. Fang Yuxue didn't even turn in her direction, just mentally wondered what she was doing here. She was on her feet, modestly shrinking. And some man putting his hand on her shoulder said that he had last seen her 3 months ago and did not expect that she would become even more beautiful than before. The girl was silent and thought that if he knew he had just given the bride price to her parents, she wouldn't have to entertain this smelly man. The man pulled her even closer to him, asking how she could think of something when he was here. He asked permission to help her. Suddenly, something else caught the girl's attention and moved silently, looked in her direction, lightly furrowing her brows. It seemed that Yuxue felt uncomfortable. She looked away and seemed to be sad. The man next to her wondered if it could be that she and this guy were old acquaintances. And whoever thought that he had broken up with her a few days ago, and she had already dressed so openly and was accompanying another man, he soon decided that it was none of his business. Two men bumped into each other with shoulders as they passed Mu, who turned to the man who was with the Fang Yuxue and asked what he was doing. The man, crossing his arms over his chest, replied complacently that the boy was standing in the middle of the road, and thus blocking the way for other people. The girl was silent, looking inside. After that, the man started poking Mu, fiddling with his finger, asking if he knew what kind of place it was, and then explaining that that place was not for poor boys like him, and Mu simply ignored his words. Turning to Fan, he asked if she had chosen what to wear today. He ignored it, and the man went crazy, asking how this guy dares to ignore him without even knowing who he is. He also asked how Mu gave himself to someone else's girlfriend right in front of him, and he knew again that he didn't seem to notice this man. He only talked to the girl, this time asking what her relationship was with this man. Fan grabbed his comrade's arm, telling the Mu that it was none of his business. The man was pleased with this. He asked the girl if she knew if he had heard what the girl said, and added that the guy could only dream of such beauty. Mu thought at first that Fan was originally a simple and kind girl, but now he realized he was wrong about her. Looking at the backs of the two retreating figures and clenching his fist tightly, he decided it didn't matter. They ended the relationship and it was already in the past, and the investment meeting was happening on the 14th floor of the hotel where Mu is going. Now the system task has arrived for which the carrier can get 10 hit points. The assignment was that Yan had to sign a business investment contract. It is not easy to sign a business contract. Then Kunri figured it all out. Beforehand, some businesses that had skyrocketed in Yan's past life would definitely be in his pocket, as well as Yan, who wanted to enter. The guard at the entrance asked where the guy was in such a hurry, and if he knew what kind of place it was. People from outside can't come in here, and they knew it was about an investment meeting. The guard was still talking. He asked if the guy knew who all those people inside were. He said that they were all wealthy and high-ranking, so he wasn't sure that Yan could get in there, and angrily knew that he would also invest in the business. However, the guard did not let himself be discouraged. He asked what kind of boss he would pass by dressing like that. The man said that there is no cleaning service here, and therefore the guy should go back to his business and not create problems. Investors are judged by their clothes. Suddenly the guard greeted someone who was walking behind, and it was Lord Ma, the same man who came with the Yuxue fan. He saw Yan and recognized him as the boy he had found on the first floor. The man turned to the guard, asking if he couldn't get the boy out. The guard laughed, replied that it was true. He didn't know where this guy was coming from, but it seemed like he didn't understand when talking to him. The ranger reported that he even said he would invest, although it was hard to believe. The old man laughed at this idea. He turned to Mu, asking if he was really going to invest. Having only a firm character, he advised the guy to go and earn some money for a decent suit and also told him not to bother the eyes of the people here. The old man put his hand on his shoulder and said that impudence is good, but for example, when courting a girl and not in such places, he hugged his female companion who clearly felt uncomfortable and said that just being arrogant is not enough. You also need to have money. The guard held out his hand, blocking his way, asking if he didn't understand that he wasn't allowed to enter and what was wrong with him. Suddenly the old man saw someone next to him. It was Kunrei, who also came here and whom I had not seen for a long time, taking advantage of the moment when the man was distracted. Mu asked the girl if she was doing it just for money. She just replied that it was none of his business. However, the boy continued, "It's really only the money that matters to her, and because of that, she'll follow anyone." He asked if it was worth it to dress like that and sell her body to them. Fan didn't answer and Mu gave up and walked away. Meanwhile, the old man told his brother that he had heard rumors that a nobleman had bought the company. The money he had not only paid off his debts, but the company's business was going downhill. He congratulated Kum for this. Kum said that all of this was true and he was very lucky. He was so worried about unpaid payments that he couldn't sleep and didn't expect such a turnaround. Then he asked how the old man himself was doing, who, closing his eyes, reported that things were not going very well for his entire company lately. He had the same bad luck as brother Kum. Then old Ma told Kun that they had always had a good relationship. Then he asked him to help him and introduce him to this nobleman. At that moment, Mu was still dealing with the guard. Conroy had already seen his boss, so he didn't even respond to the old man's words. He just said the name of the Mu president out loud. Kun told that he had things to do for them to talk to next time. The man went up to the president, mentally wondering what Kunrei just called that guy president. Fang Yuxue was silent all this time, heard the men talking that he thought Mu was just a small official with mediocre indicators. So how could he make the boss address himself that way? Kun Ki was about to leave, asked if he was confused. President Conroy says that one can't judge a book by its cover, because President Yan is now the head of the real estate company. The old man looked horrified. He asked again if this guy was the exact same person who bought his company. Conroy responded positively, confirming that Yan Mu is the new president of his company. Ma immediately changed his face, began to apologize to the president and ask him not to take his words seriously. He justified himself by saying that he really didn't know what this person's position was, and he said that a high-ranking person should forgive the mistakes of the people below him. He asked President Yan not to be angered by what had happened. However, he was again just ignored and not paying attention. This man told Kunri that they should not waste time. They should enter as soon as possible at the place where the investment meeting is taking place. But the old man did not give up. He started to say that the whole situation that happened today was completely his fault. So if Mu needs to do something, then he can just say it directly. The man promised that he would definitely do everything. He also wanted to express his apologies to Chairman Mu after the investment meeting. Now Yan, who looked at the man clarifying his name. He confirmed excitedly. After that, Yan nonchalantly told the man to get out of here and walked by. Left behind, the old man looked at the receding figures of the people with displeasure and became angry. He thought this guy was too arrogant because he considers himself too important. With a few pennies, the meeting was being held. Conroy asked if the president has any specific goals he wants to achieve. But in that meeting, he replied that although there is no such goal, they should look at everything first. The first companies you thought of had already recruited the right number of people, so he didn't think he had much of a chance. Suddenly, he saw the place of the Xinjiang Corporation. He didn't expect to meet the top internet company from his past life here. However, it is now still a small company that no one is interested in, which is quite surprising. Some guys approached Yan, saying that his Xinjiang Corporation is mainly involved in internet products and wireless routers. He held out his business card. Shang, the company's founder himself, bent down to attract investors but thought it seemed that this man's success was not unfounded. Conroy stood next to him and explained to the president that routers are something that used to be manufactured overseas and they probably don't have a big market within the country. Some gray-haired man with glasses rubbing his chin with his hand said it was true. Routers were very advanced now and therefore domestic manufacturers could not afford it. And with this capital, they could not invest in information technology. The man who was next to the man with the glasses said that everything is absolutely true. Currently, the internet is not very expensive. If people can use it without a router, then what's the point of paying for it? Jiang Peng began to answer them that he knew they weren't very optimistic about the prospects of routers, but just asked to believe in it now. It is only the initial stage of the internet era. In a few years, wireless networking will quickly capture the market. He believed that routers will definitely become very popular. People said that it would only be stupider to invest money in a product with such low prospects. But there was one person who still showed a willingness to invest in Xingyi. He said in plain text that he would invest. That would be Yan Mu. He held a business card in his hands and said he would invest 15 million in his company. Conroy was frightened. He believed that the president had made the decision to invest there in a hurry. Then he suggested that he think about it all over again, as if John couldn't believe it. He asked the president if he was really going to invest 15 million riels in their company. Mu nodded. He added that he was very optimistic about the company and said that although it is not showing itself properly now, it will definitely happen in the future, along with the development. On the internet, he said he believes Zoom Corporation has a bright future ahead of it. Jiang He explained that the president was absolutely right. However, someone in the crowd did not agree with the man. It was old Ma pushing the crowd. He was walking forward, telling people not to listen to this man because all of this is complete nonsense. He doesn't know anything, he just brags. For the first time here, and it's already turning up its nose like this. People started asking if the old man knew this person. The old man laughed and said that as soon as you hear the name of this person, you start to feel that your ears are dirty. He said that this guy is not worthy of being known. Kunri was furious. He told the old man that he didn't want to talk too much because they were all colleagues, but strongly advised him not to talk nonsense. The old man, pointing at Kun, started shouting that everyone knows that he belongs to the company, that he got into a lot of debt and intentionally owed salaries to the employees. And he also wanted to get a subsidiary company to withdraw his money. People began to exclaim, wondering how this was possible. They thought that Kun and Mu were probably the same people, so Mu hadn't gone far. The old man said that if Kun had been smarter, he wouldn't have become this man's dog. Kunri completely lost his temper in anger. Mu, holding his shoulder, didn't let him attack another man. The protagonist turned to the old man, asking if he was sure he didn't have 15 million. Bitterly, the old man blurted out that he was always sure he was right, especially in front of a guy like Yan. The old man had never heard of a rich guy named Yan when he allegedly bought a food real estate campaign. Now he was wondering how much money this man had left. Yan in this case offered the man to place a bet with him. He decided to bet that he could invest 15 million in Xinjiang now. He bet the entire food company on this bet. The self-confident old man said that Mu definitely has no money to invest in Xinjiang, and he will definitely lose that bet. Mu made a condition that if he lost, he would have to kneel, admit his mistake in front of everyone, move publicly, and slap himself in the face 3 times. He also added that he has already said everything about the food company, so if he loses, he will be ready to do everything the same. The old man was sure that Yan Mu, I didn't have money to invest, but I thought there was always a chance to lose in everything. He was worried that his authority and reputation might suffer. Mu was calm. He noticed the agitation and indecision of man who had previously accused him so vehemently, and he asked if he was afraid of losing. Suddenly, someone's voice was heard. The person told Mr. Ma that everyone was waiting here for half a day to see a good show, so he just can't ruin everyone's fun in a split second. The old man turned his head to the person who just spoke to him. It was Tangni, the young lord of the Tang family, the largest family in Chongqing City. The old man, when he saw the young master Tang, he immediately asked what had brought him here. Mu was familiar with this man's name. Tang Ning, the head of the Tang family in Chongqing City. The source materials for the corporation were purchased from the Tang family. Tang Ning told the guys to keep going and not pay attention to him. The old man immediately said that everything that was happening was just a joke. They were just having fun and didn't plan to put anything on the line, and made Tang Ming think that something was going on here. Tang Ming frowned, which told the old man that there was no interest. This night, according to him, it is difficult to come across something curious, and Tang is having fun. When he finished, he asked if Ma had a problem with him. The frightened old man abruptly started to nod and say that it was all wrong, and Tang misunderstood and said that he couldn't help but admire the young master. So how could he have problems with him? He also said that they only at that moment. Curry advised the president to rethink whether it was really necessary to make this bet. He replied that it was necessary. He put his hands in his pockets and suddenly asked where his card was. Suddenly, Fang Yuxue turned to Mu. She called him and advised him not to be embarrassed and to leave soon. At the same time, he was looking for his bank card in his pockets. The fact is that Mu Rico was just a joke. The old man stopped him and appeared beside her. He told her that a loser like Mu, who only brags, cannot be trusted. Everything has come to such a point that he also refuses to accept defeat, told the Mu to stop pretending he had money. Yan, with his eyes shining, looked at his bank card, which he finally found. The guy told Jiang that being a person is the same as doing business. Honesty is the most important thing. He, with a card in his hand, said that he had money on that card, and if Jiang agreed, Mu would invest in his business, so the money could be transferred now. Jiang was incredibly happy. He of course agreed to cooperate, then asked Yam to wait while he pulled out of the terminal. Jiang thought that this young man was dressed quite simply, but his decisions are firm and trustworthy. That's why he deserves trust. The enraged old man pulls the bank card out of his hand, saying that it was completely exaggerated. On the plate, the man lifted the selected object and addressed everyone who watched the presentation. He said that a person who has 15 million in his account uses a regular bank card. It seemed like an absolute farce. People agreed with his words, because if he had 10 million, he would have become a VIP customer of the bank long ago. Why does he use a regular one? These arguments seemed logical to everyone, and Yam took his card from this man and said that to find out if there was money in it, you need to slide it through the terminal. Zhang had already removed the terminal and was ready to hand it over to the press. Mu swiped the card, but a message appeared on the terminal screen saying there were not enough funds in the account. Therefore, the payment was rejected. The old man burst into laughter. He said that Yan once again said he is 15 million, and also added that he admires his acting skills. Mu didn't understand why there weren't enough funds on his card. Kun asked the president what they would do now. Jian put his hand on his head, allowing the thought that this man wasn't serious. However, judging by his words, it can't be said that he looks like a cheater. The old man said he wasn't a reckless person. He said he would act for the sake of Miss Fan. He told Mudo just apologize to him and kneel. Then everything would be forgotten immediately. Tang telling the young man that the most important thing was to be honest, to be ready to place bets, and to accept defeat. The old man just nodded in agreement, as if confirming these words. Since Tang himself said that, the old man said that Mr. Tang should decide who was right. Kun actually intervened. He said he thinks it's just a mistake, because everyone knows that the banking system can fail when large transfers occur. Kun actually said that he had things to do and that he couldn't spend too much time here with him. Ma started shouting, asking where the guards were and demanded to call him immediately. Ma is in such a hurry because she's afraid she'll be embarrassed when everyone finds out that Yan really has that much money on his card. Meanwhile, Kunrei was already talking to someone on the phone. The old man shouted that she was the president and that he was not afraid of some boy like him. The guards came running and asked the young man what had happened. He pointed his finger at Yan, and he told the guards to surround him. He said he would give the guy one last chance, and if he didn't kneel down and admit his mistake, he would be beaten until he confessed. Yam, who calmly replied that it was too early for that. Also, no loss to Ma. Why should he kneel? He thought it was the mandan himself who should be kneeling in front of him. It seems that this man really thought that Yan Mu could be bullied so easily. He said that Yam is very stubborn, so he told the guards to pin him to the ground, force him to kneel down and admit his mistake. Then Libya suddenly appeared and was ready to defend the president. He shouted that no one would dare to touch him. Libya, looking around, thought he could fight 2 people alone but deal with 5 or 6 not. Suddenly someone called the guards losers, and soon Algo flew right in front of them with great speed. Libya was surprised, mentally wondering what had happened. The guard who was hit was now crouching on the ground, and Mu was next to him. The old man asked how this guy still has the courage to resist. According to Ma, Yam is not capable of anything else, except turning up her nose endlessly. Yaksu was shocked because she didn't know that Mu could fight like that. When he had time to learn, everyone was asked to calm down and wait for Mr. Kun to call an expert. The old man began to be indignant. He still had things to do. The fact that a bank employee came here would give absolutely nothing. Tang insisted that Ma wait here with everyone, because Yan, who lost, would be recognized. Only when everything was reliably known, Ma Dong replied that he agreed to wait, since Tang asked, but he would beat Yan if he found out that he was lying. During all this time, a man in a suit and with a laptop was standing at the table that this laptop was on. He was checking some data. The data showed that there are no funds on Mu's bank card. Seeing this, the man turned to Mu and asked if his funds on the card amounted to more than 50 million. Mu said contemptuously that there was nothing on the map. So how could there be 50 million? And who confirmed the information of the officials? He immediately explained that a bank card can be frozen if there are too many funds. According to the rules, it was simply necessary to unfreeze the account and then the bank card service would be restored. Mundan did not believe that such a thing was possible. Yaksu, who was by his side, was no less surprised. Mu asked the employee if he could make a transfer now. The old man again began to resist, asking how much Kun paid for this show. Because he didn't understand how this person could have 50 million, the employee handed over his business card, saying there was a phone, and send it by email. He also said he would give him his working number, and then Malden could call and ask if he had any questions. After that, Yan received his bank card stating that it had been thawed, and also said that when he had free time he could go to the bank and ask for his gold card. People began to discuss what they had heard about the gold card. One of them said he has a friend who is not poor, who also uses a gold card. Mahjong became enraged again, and began to shout that all of this wasn't fair, and that if Yan didn't invest in Xinyan now, the contest would be lost to them. Holding his thawed card in his hands, Yan noticed that Madong still couldn't calm down. Yan Mu swiped his bank card through the terminal again, and this time the money was transferred to Jiang. His report was successful. Kun asked Ma if he had anything more to say about it. The frustrated Mandong still couldn't believe what had happened. He said that they only wanted to humiliate him, that they deceived him. He also added that he couldn't kneel because real men don't do that. Real men don't kneel, however, after someone kicked Ma Dong in the leg, causing him to scream in pain. He fell, turning to look. Tang was the one standing behind him. Ma Dong asked what he was doing, and he said that the old man had lost it. He should be able to admit his mistakes. The young Master Tang put his foot on Mundong's back and told him to do what had been asked earlier and asked him not to waste time. Mundon, who had already knelt in front of Yan, said he was a blind dog who didn't see who was in front of her. He told President Yan that he shouldn't have contacted him, and then began to apologize. Yan asked if Mahjong had forgotten anything. He said he didn't forget anything. He asked for forgiveness on his knees and slapped him 3 times in the face. Everything is said. Looking at Kun at that table behind Yan, he asked the man on his knees what to say about the truth about the food company. Did Mundongo decide to put all the blame on Kun? An enthusiastic Kun Rui thanked the president. The old man feeling ashamed, that's why he was talking nonsense. After this confession, all the people gathered here began to understand what it was really like. Everyone present decided that Madong was a real liar, and anyone who dealt with him would fall into a deep hole. Embittered and humiliated, Madden left the place. But his thoughts were again Yan Mu, who had disgraced him. He thought he would never forget this and would definitely avenge such a humiliation. Jiangping thanked President Mu for investing so much money in his Xingyang corporation. He promised that the corporation would not let him down, and Mu, in turn, thanked Tang for everything, and told him to contact him if anything happened. When necessary, Yaxu stood aside and looked at Mu. She had already realized that he had really become rich, and she thought she wouldn't be here now if it wasn't for this man's refusal. She began to remember sitting on the couch with her mother and brother, and her mother asked if she remembered the Ma that was introduced by her Aunt Wang. To his mother, he asked Fan to meet him. The brother added that he heard that there would be an investment meeting at the hotel today, and that Ma would also be there, and for Fan to go there. With this man's van, which she herself protested, she said she did not want to go there, but her father, crossing his arms over his chest, asked with displeasure if she decided something on her own. In this case, he said that there was no hope for Yan Mu anymore because they needed a new son-in-law. Otherwise, why did they raise her? The mother, covering her eye with a handkerchief, began to press, saying that she needed someone with money or else her family will be destroyed. Yaxu wants the mother to say that it is very difficult to raise 2 children. Fan turned to leave. At this moment, Tang was telling Mu that they were probably brought together by fate itself. He also told the president that he could contact him in the future if he suddenly needed something. A message came from the system. She was congratulating her on completing the task. He also received 10 lifetime points and additional bonus points. It was reported that due to the success of the carrier, from now on, 10% of the number of hit points gained by the host will be extracted by the system to increase the level, and Lua now has 23 hit points. Mu was surprised, thinking about what that meant. The system not only manages his life, but also charges him a commission. Worried, Libby informed Yanmu and Kunrei that things were very bad, as the workers were on strike again. Kunrei was very surprised by such news. Why are the workers on strike again if they have received all their wages? Libyan said that the money has indeed been paid. But these insatiables are now gathered at the entrance of the company and are dissatisfied with the fact that the company is in the hand of Cum. Kunrei addressed the president, saying that the new program will not come soon. He offered to go back to the company and see what was going on. Mu said goodbye to Tang and Mr. Jiang and said yes, to go soon. There was a struggle with the ungrateful workers who had already received everything, but they still rebelled. The workers were dissatisfied according to them. They wanted to see Seno come and for wages to be really paid, but there was still no work. What should they do in this case? They will be fired. The people who worked for Kun could not handle such an onslaught. As a result, one of them was knocked to the ground, fell and was hit. After that, he got up and had a knife in his hand, according to him not to be pushed, and threatened to beat the person who did it. The threats were not empty talk. This guy stuck a knife in a worker. Others asked to call an ambulance as soon as possible. By this time, Kunrei had already arrived at the company building. They were wondering what kind of noise this was. Bio tried to disperse the crowd by announcing that President Yan and Kun had returned. A blonde man with a knife shouted to the workers that they had been paid, but they were still here. He made it clear to them that if they didn't disperse, he wouldn't let them into the building anyway. This guy's brother agreed with everything that was said and added that if the workers didn't want to be beaten, they should leave immediately before it was too late, and especially not block the path of Mr. Khan, the worker who took the stab while still standing. He was writhing in pain and holding a knife wound. Another worker was next to him, who helped him and did the same. Finally, everyone realized that Mr. Kun had returned. He was shocked when he saw what was happening here and looked at the injured worker. These two did so. The 2 brothers told Kun that they were defending their authority. They also said that they only need to pay 10,000 to the injured worker, and after that the case will be resolved. Mu asked if they had called an ambulance. A man among the workers replied that they had been called, but an ambulance would arrive only in 10 minutes and the injured man was too weak to hold out until then. The man sat on the floor, holding his head. He said that when the project was stopped, many of them were left without means of subsistence and his own daughter fell ill. The doctor told her that she needed a small operation, but how could he pay for it if he was out of work? Mu frowned for some reason, remembering his father at that moment. The crowd said that some workers left to find another job, but many stayed here because it is not so easy to find a job. Now, the worker who helped the injured man reported that he is not breathing. The ambulance took a long time. Libio asked what they would do. He cruelly said that first you need to tie these two together. Bio walks towards the two guys. One said that thanks to them no one would dare to cause trouble here anymore, and the other asked Bio if they had done anything wrong. Bio, stretching his neck and wrists, asked these guys, how dare they do such a thing here, after Kun had taken them to his service and learned that at that moment he was sitting near a workman who was in very bad condition. Mu concluded that there was no breathing. The system reported that the worker was still breathing, but he was desperate. He knew this, since the system controls his life. It probably has access to other people's lives as well, so there must be a way to save someone else. Mu turned to the system, asking if there was a way to save this man's life, and said that this worker could not leave here. The system has announced that when it is updated, medicines will appear in the system store, which can be exchanged for hit points. The system window has now displayed in this store many items in which the only 3 are still locked. Skills available in this store of strength, agility, and endurance, and in a situation with a person leaving, are simply useless. Then he asked the system if there was any other way to save that person's life. The answer didn't take long to appear, and Mu discovered that it was possible to pass hit points to prolong that person's life, but only for a few minutes so that they could survive. In this case, the system calculated that the carrier would use up to 12 hit points. If the carrier was confident in its decision, it should have responded. Of course, there was a small observation. This function can only be used once, so it wasn't worth rushing to make a decision. However, Mu replied without hesitation that he was sure, after all, if this worker goes from base here, it will affect how new buildings will be constructed and moved. Mu's hit points have been reduced by 12 points to extend his life. Now, there are 11 points left. The worker began to show signs of life. Another asked him to breathe because help is already nearby. He needs to breathe because an ambulance will arrive very soon. Libya successfully did his job. He informed Yanmu and Kunri that the two pieces of were already connected. However, one of the guys said that they did all of this just for the good of the company, and they can't do that to them. Mu, who was now standing next to these guys, asked again about the good for the company. The tied blonde man, looking at Yanmu, recognized him as the person they had already met and asked if it was him. The blonde, recognizing her old acquaintance in the region, smiled, saying that she could not find the money, and that is why she came to beg Kun. Kun asked Mu if he knew what this guy was talking about. Yan said she was going to ask him that. Someone stepped on the foot of the tied man. Bio didn't like the blonde's smile. He ordered him to tell what the matter was. The blonde immediately vented about everything. His girlfriend's mother lost 500,000 to them in the old Ma, and now owes them. And Yan said he would pay by tomorrow. This guy's brother confirmed everything, saying that even if this guy can't return the money, the girl is still very beautiful. It can be successfully sold on the black market for 8 million. Kun really got very angry. Could it be that these guys really want to turn this company into a meeting place, or even want to bring him to his grave? Kun returned to the president again, saying that he knew perfectly well what the situation of this company was. He told them that he had found some way to make money and dragged them there, and Kun couldn't do anything about it. However, he assured that he never meant to harm. People frowned, asked again. Kun confirmed what was said and added that the company is now owned by Yam, and his debt was fully paid off immediately. Mu kicks the blonde tied with his foot. Workers who watched this said that these tied-up guys were harassing workers all the time, but now they got what they deserved. Karma will fall on them. The crowd also said that it was this young man who bought the real estate company. The ambulance finally arrived. 2 men left with a stretcher. We asked everyone to lead the way. After that, the injured worker was placed on a stretcher, declaring that he could still be saved. They asked again to clear the road. Kunri was happy about it. Everything was fine. He asked the president what his next actions would be, who replied that first you have to try to calm the workers. They already have a team of workers ready, so the workforce is not a problem. The workers were excited. This was expected because last time they did not receive wages for 6 months. If this would happen again, they were worried. Yan asked them to calm down and stop worrying, as the company would enter into an employment contract with them that would guarantee the monthly payment. In addition, on behalf of the company, Yan guaranteed security during working hours and bonuses at the end of the year. In a previous life, Mu's father broke his leg on a construction site due to lack of contract and insurance, lost the job and started limping. One of the workers, delighted, said he had heard that contracts are signed only with decent employees, and if the company does not comply, a fine is applied, and then the case is transferred to the Public Security Secretariat. Someone was reassured by this because in this case the company will not be able to deceive them. Bio told Mu that this is the first time he has heard about signing a contract with ordinary workers. He believed that under these circumstances the company would collapse sooner or later, the company would come to an end much faster. Libyan noted that Mu has money and talent, but one should not act so recklessly. Just look at which company he invested money in today. Now a contract with the workers, the bodyguard remembering the two guys looked around, pointing at them and asking what to do with them now. Kun told the bio that it was necessary to preserve the company's reputation. It was impossible for anyone to know about this incident and said that there are still workers who were injured. Today the company must cover his medical expenses and ensure that this does not happen again. Kun promised the president to follow up on this and assured that there would be no problems. Mu said that in that case he was on leave. Kun told Libyan to take President Ian home, but he said it wasn't worth doing because he would get there alone, putting his hand on his bodyguard's shoulder. Conroy said his president is a very purposeful guy. You just have to wait. He will show himself very soon. They both looked at Yan. Conroy was sure Bio would definitely change his mind about this man. Finally, Mu returned to his house. Opening the door, he decided that his mother and father had already returned. However, a girl was waiting for him outside the door, Yao Ming. She saw him and immediately asked why he came back so late. Smiling, he said that there were problems in the company that needed to be solved, which is why he was late. The girl said she noticed that Mu started working twice as much. She asked if it was because he wanted to marry Yuxue and get rich. The guy patted her on the head again, telling her not to talk such nonsense, and then added that tomorrow he would take her somewhere. He knew that Ming's dream was to live in a big house. Ming asked where they were going exactly, and if he could tell her about it now, but he replied that she would only find out about everything tomorrow. When he left, he said it was too late. She needed to rest. The girl looking at her back looked upset, and thought that Ian knew it hadn't been himself for the last 2 days. It seemed that he had become a completely different person. That's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.